Do we think I can carry all of these books for the thumbnail? I'm not really sure. I did it! That was a lot. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I am very excited because we are halfway through September, which means we are this close to the official start of fall. It certainly does not feel like it. I live in Texas and the weather here has been abysmal. Today is actually the first day that it went below 80 degrees in I don't even know how long. And tomorrow it's gonna go right back up to 90s, but I am just going to pretend that the weather's getting cooler and that fall is coming here. Last year was the first year I got back into reading and I didn't really dive into the seasonal reading. So in the fall I was just reading kind of like regular books. I think I read one witchy book last year, but I didn't really embrace the fall books. I just started rewatching Gilmore Girls to get myself more into the fall mood, and I'm very excited to fully embrace all of my fall reads. But first, I wanted to go through some recommendations that I have for fall, and then we'll go through my fall TBR. Most of my recommendations are mystery thrillers, and it's not necessarily that the content of the books fits the fall vibe. I just personally think that thrillers and murder mysteries are really great for this time of year. First, we've got The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson, and I feel like this was such a unique mystery thriller for me. This is about a man who wants to kill his wife, and he meets this woman at an airport, and he tells her that and convinces her to fly home with him and help him kill his wife. The plot twists in this kept me on my toes. This was really fun, and it actually has a book that came out after it. I don't remember what the second one is called, but I believe it follows the same characters and is a continuation of the story. I'm not really sure. Next is Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica, and this one, if you can tell by the cover, I feel like it has a little bit more of a fall time setting. I don't remember where or when it takes place, but the cover makes me think of a rainy Washington state kind of area. This is about multiple women who go missing within the same town, and then 11 years later, one of them, who I think she disappeared when she was 6, she just comes back out of nowhere. So it follows the story of this girl being found after 11 years of being missing, and so much more happens. This was a book that I could not put down. I read it in 1 or 2 days, and I'm not saying that this is the best book I've ever read or that it's the best writing. It's definitely not, but it was a very entertaining read. The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. This one I would say is more of a mystery and not really a thriller. So if you're not into the kind of more scary-ish thriller books, then maybe this would be more for you. This is about Owen, who has a teenage daughter named Bailey from his previous marriage, and then he remarries Hannah, and one day Owen just disappears, and he leaves a note with Hannah that says, "Protect her," referring to Bailey. Hannah and Bailey do not really get along, and now they are stuck trying to figure out the mystery of what happened to Owen, where did he go, what's going on. The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I've read, I think, just one other book by Lucy Foley, and I liked this one better. This is another murder mystery, and it takes place on a rainy island in Ireland. An exclusive wedding on a remote Irish island. The bride, the plus one, the best man, the wedding planner, and the bridesmaid all have a secret, all have a motive, but only one is a murderer. I feel like all of her books kind of follow a similar plot where it's 5 to 7 people and you get everybody's point of view. One person has been murdered, one's the murderer, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. But out of the 2 that I've read, I like this one the best, and I do recommend it. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is kind of interesting for me to recommend, I feel, because I did not love this as much as everybody else. This is a fan favorite book. Very few people did not enjoy this. And I wouldn't say that I didn't enjoy it. I think I had fun while I was reading it, but I was a little bit let down. So this is a young adult murder mystery, and I love young adult books, but that's what I remember, is that there were parts of it that just felt a little too young to me. But I actually did like it enough that I picked up the second one, and I do plan to give it a try. It's actually one of the books on my fall TBR, but I didn't absolutely love it. But if you've read any of Holly Jackson's other books and you know you like her writing, or if you just like young adult murder mysteries, I think you would probably enjoy this. It follows Pip, who is investigating a murder that took place a couple of years ago in her town. Everyone believes that this one guy did it, but she doesn't think so. So it's actually her senior year capstone project where she investigates it. Not my absolute favorite, but I think it's worth a try. The Chain by Adrienne McKinty. This was just a really fun, fast-paced book. The chapters in this book are so short, and I'm pretty sure that everyone pretty much ends on a cliffhanger. The idea of The Chain is a child gets kidnapped. That child's parents get a phone call from another set of parents who say, hey, we've kidnapped your child because someone else has our child kidnapped, and we will not give you your child back until you kidnap someone else's kid. So it's just a never-ending chain of children being kidnapped in order for someone to get their kid back. Does that make sense? This was just a book that I got very sucked into. I will say all the events in it are not super realistic. So if you're one of those people that just can't read something if it's not very realistic, like action movies where things are a little far-fetched, then this wouldn't be the book for you. But if that isn't something that would bother you, then it was a very entertaining and quick read. The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I know this is so popular and you've probably already heard of it or read it, but I just had to mention it. This is about Alicia, who one day murders her husband and then never speaks a word ever again. She's put into this psychiatric institute, and this psychotherapist, Theo, is determined to be the one person that gets her to speak. I know that this is hit or miss for people, but I fall into the majority, I think, of people who loved this book. The ending had me jaw to the floor, just like staring at the wall for a while, and I loved it. What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. My roommate Kat actually picked this out for me, so I had never heard anything about it when I went into it. This one I thought was very spooky. It takes place in the woods, and that kind of screams fall to me, on top of it just being a thriller. And this is about this group of 3 girls who were best friends when they were, I want to say like 12 or 13, and they hang out in the woods every summer. And one summer, one of the girls gets brutally attacked. She's stabbed, I think, 17 times, and somehow she lives. The killer is found and put in jail, but ever since that summer, all 3 of the girls have been holding on to a big secret, and one of them is wanting to let out that secret. This was another one that once I got to probably the halfway mark, I just could not put it down. Last mystery thriller also has some kind of fantasy elements. This is a very unique book, and it is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This is actually one of the books that got me back into reading, and I absolutely loved it. I will say it's been over a year since I read it, so I'm not sure if I would love it as much today as I did back then, but I'm convinced if I read it again today, I would still like it. I'll just read you the back for this one. Evelyn Hardcastle will die every day until Aidan Bishop can identify her killer and break the cycle. But every time the day begins again, Aidan wakes up in the body of a different guest, and some of his hosts are more helpful than others. So it's a murder mystery, we have a big Groundhog Day element, and he wakes up in a new body every day. It is so interesting. This is very twisty, and it's definitely a confusing book, but I found that fun. I thought it was very engaging and entertaining. After I read it, I forced my boyfriend to read it, and honestly, I would love to reread it one day. Okay, I guess I lied. This next one could maybe be considered mystery thriller, but it's also, I think, dark academia. I could be wrong. I haven't read very much dark academia, but if this does count, then it's the only dark academia book that I've enjoyed so far, and that is Ace of Spades. This is a young adult book, and it follows these 2 kids who are in high school. It's a private high school, super cliquey. I think one of the main characters really does not feel like he fits in, and one day somebody starts sending these Gossip Girl type texts exposing people's secrets. And I think that's all you really need to know. People describe this as Gossip Girl meets the movie Get Out, which I think is definitely overgeneralizing things a little bit, but should help you get a better idea of what this is about. This was so much fun, and it's a book that I never see people talk about, and I'm not sure why. Moving on to my last few recommendations, which are fantasy, I have an obvious choice, which is Harry Potter. If you have not read these, I highly recommend, even if you've already watched the movies. I am a huge Harry Potter fan, like I always have been, and I watched all the movies as a kid. My whole family, we are obsessed with it, and I never read the books until last year and loved them. Oh, and it's very much like fall vibes. It's witches, that sort of thing, and it just, if you know, you know, it is very fall. Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I know this book was very popular, I feel like last year, but I don't hear people talking about it very much anymore. This is a cozy fantasy that I fell in love with. Anyone that I've recommended this to in real life has laughed at me because of the cover, but I don't care. This is just a super cute and fun, easy read. Because it's cozy fantasy, that means it is low stakes, there's not really any action or anything, so it's just kind of like a peaceful read. But it's very fall time to me. This is about Viv, who she used to be like some sort of warrior, but now she's not, and she wants to just kind of settle down, and she decides to open up a coffee shop. And it's obviously in a fantasy world. She's an orc, I think, which I don't really know what that is. I just know she's green and big and buff. But whatever country or place that she is living in and setting up this coffee shop, nobody has even heard of coffee. They don't know what it is. It's slice of life, a little bit slow. Like I said, there's no action or anything. So if that doesn't sound like your thing, then I don't recommend. But if it does, then this is an awesome book. I highly recommend. This was just so much fun. I thought it was so cute. It just made me happy. And I really want to reread it this fall. Okay, my last two recommendations don't necessarily give off the fall vibe, but they are fantasy. And I think that they are great if you want to get into fantasy, because fall to me just equals fantasy. It's one of my favorite authors, and her new book is coming out, I think, in October or November, so it's the perfect time to pick these up. And that is the Caraval trilogy and Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. You don't have to read these together, but if you do, Caraval comes first. Caraval is about this magical festival, carnival kind of thing that comes up once a year, and these two sisters, Scarlett and Tella, who are in Caraval. Tella is kidnapped by the ringleader of everything, and in order to get her back, Scarlett has to win. And then Once Upon a Broken Heart follows mostly a new set of characters and Evangeline, who makes a deal with one of the Fates. And it's kind of like a rule, you don't make a deal with the Fates, but she does, and then she owes him these favors, and she's kind of like following along with this agenda that he has, and it's so good. I loved both of these so much, and I cannot wait for the third book in this series to come out in, I don't know, October, November? I used to have the date memorized, but now I don't remember. It's been so long since I read these. Stephanie Garber's writing is just very much whimsical, fairy tale, just fun, kind of easy to get into fantasy. There's no complex magic system. There's not a whole lot of complicated world building or anything. So I think this is really easy if you want to just get into fantasy, if you've never read any before, or if you just like that kind of fairy tale type books. These are amazing. Now for my TBR, I have a lot of books. These are not organized whatsoever. I just picked them off my shelf randomly. So I'm just gonna go in random order, and I'm gonna start with what I know you saw sitting at the top, which is Fourth Wing. If you don't know what this book is, respectfully, how? This book was everywhere, and this is the most universally loved book that I've ever seen on BookTok, BookTube over the last couple years. I don't know a whole lot about the plot other than it follows our main character who goes to this academy, and I think there's 4 or 5 different groups you can go into. She's always wanted to be a scribe, but then her mother is like, you're gonna become a dragon rider. So she goes to school, she starts to ride dragons, and it's very high stakes. I think there's an enemies to lovers romance, and everyone's obsessed with this. I won't lie, I'm definitely scared to read this book because of just how much hype there is around it. I'm afraid of maybe being disappointed because it's overhyped in my head, and I've just been using the excuse that I'm gonna wait until it's fall or winter time because fantasy is just better in the fall. This is one of the books that I really want to get to by the end of the year, so hopefully I get to her in the fall. No promises for any of these. I definitely won't be reading all of these because I have a big stack, and I will not be reading this number of books in the fall. There's just no way. Next is House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. This book is gorgeous. I bought it partially for the cover, but also because I had heard really amazing things about it. I think it is a young adult horror, and I haven't read very many horror books. But since it's young adult, I don't think it can be that bad. I don't know anything, but according to the first couple sentences on the back, it's about these sisters who go missing and then disappear a month later with no memories. I just feel because it's gothic, it's horror, it would just be perfect for fall, maybe around Halloween time. The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. This is just an obvious pick. I love the cover of this one too, but it's very much fall witches. This is perfect for October probably, but it's actually on my September TBR. And this is a young adult about witches who control the weather. That's all I know. Also on my September TBR is The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels by India Holton. I saw Katie's read this in a reading blog, and she really liked it, and that convinced me to buy it. All I know is that it is kind of a whimsical fantasy, there's floating houses and stuff, and I know it's a romance, and I think one of them is sent to assassinate the other, so it's that kind of plot, and it just sounds cute. Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. This is the sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, Like I said, I liked the first one enough to want to continue it, and I've actually heard that this one is better for a lot of people. This takes place obviously after the first book, and I believe that Pip is starting a podcast in this one. One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. This is a recent purchase, and I feel like this book is, I think it was released recently, and people are loving it. I think it's a modern day fantasy about witches, like two rival witching families, and it is a Romeo and Juliet retelling. I feel like this fits the vibes, and I've heard that her writing is just amazing, and I really want to read my first book by her. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. This I also bought in the same shopping spree as One for My Enemy. I feel like this book was having a moment, and everybody was loving it. I think it's another slice of life, low stakes fantasy, which obviously I think I enjoy that. So this sounded like it was right up my alley. It's about this girl, Emily Wilde, who is researching fairies. She's putting together an encyclopedia, and she, I think, is being sent to some specific like village or something to study a certain type of fae. I actually have not read a single book with fae in it yet, so this would be interesting. I don't know if I should wait until I've already read something with fae in it or what. Maybe this would be better to read before then, like, I don't know. But this is very much fall to me. Or maybe spring. I don't know. I guess if I don't get to it in the fall, it could be a good spring read. Speaking of fae, I would like to finally read ACOTAR. As you can tell behind me, I own the whole ACOTAR series. I also own the first two Throne of Glass books, and I haven't read a single book by Sarah J Maas. I really do think that I'm going to love this series as much as everybody else. I just am scared to start it because honestly, a lot of these books are pretty long. And I honestly just feel like it's a big commitment to jump into the Sarah J Maas world because you read ACOTAR and then there's Throne of Glass. And there's so many books in Throne of Glass. And the last couple books have like 2,000 pages. Scratch that, 1,000 pages. So I've just been a little bit intimidated. But I've been putting it off, specifically saying that I wanted to read it in the fall because I wanted to give it its best potential, because this is like a very woodsy kind of fantasy. And I feel like it also would be really good to read in the winter, but I just don't want to keep putting it off until the winter and then I don't end up reading it. So this is another must read by the end of 2023, and I plan to do a reading vlog once I do read this. The Atlas 6, this is the other Olivia Blake book that I own, and this one I don't actually know a whole lot about. Oh, it's about magicians, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I think it is about a group of magicians who are all kind of fighting to become part of this secret society. I was under the impression this is dark academia, which I feel like secret society and dark academia go along like hand in hand. So maybe this is in a school time setting, or maybe not. Maybe it still is dark academia, I don't really know. But this seemed like a very fall book to me, but I know that it's very hit or miss for people. There are very mixed reviews on this. The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. This is just an obvious pick. It's a little witchy read. That would be great, I think, for October. I think this is a found family, like a little bit of romance about this group of witches who all live in this house. I don't know a whole lot about this, but I've never heard a negative thing about this, only positive, and it sounds really cute. A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. This is the first book in, I think, a fantasy trilogy, and the book is tiny. So I bought it kind of for that reason, and also because I love the cover. Rachel Catherine read this series, and I think she really loved it, so I picked it up. This one also, I think, is dark academia. It's about people at a school, and it's like a deadly kind of school. Like, people die. I don't really know what happens. I'm assuming there's magic and things involved. But I feel like having a short fantasy book is rare, so I was just very excited to have this to kind of like break up other books. The Maid by Nita Prose. I've heard that this is a cozy mystery, so I don't think it's very high stakes. It's kind of more of a maybe funny and cute mystery. The only thing about the plot I know is that it's about Molly, who is a maid at a hotel, and one day she goes into a room to clean and she finds this man dead in his bed. The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix and Final Girls by Riley Sager. These are two very similar books I've heard, like very similar plot, obviously very similar name. I don't think I'll end up reading both of these this fall, if either of them, let's be honest. But I think that reading at least one of these would be fun because I think these are kind of more of a scary thriller. I've honestly heard better things about this one, and that it's kind of like a slasher film. Both of them follow what's called Final Girls, which is just a girl who has been like through some sort of traumatic event and she's the only one that survived. So like a mass murder or something, and she's the only one left. And I believe in both of these, it's like a group of final girls who get together, like kind of a support group kind of thing, and then something starts happening to them. If We Were Villains by ML Rio, I also just saw Katie's read this in a recent reading vlog, and she loved it. It is about a group of students who put on Shakespeare plays. I don't really know much else about that, and I kind of don't want to know. I feel like they kind of get obsessed with their Shakespearean characters, but I could have totally made that up. Billy Summers by Stephen King. This is my first Stephen King book, and I believe this one is a thriller as opposed to a horror, which I know a lot of his books are. It's about this guy, Billy Summers, who I think is a hitman, and he decides, I want out, I don't want to be a hitman anymore, but he has one more job he has to do. The cover has always screamed fall to me, even though up close it doesn't really look very fall, but I still equate this as a fall book. The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This is like the original Dark Academia. This book came out, I don't even know how long ago, in 1992. And I believe that pretty much all Dark Academia books are kind of based off this. Like If We Were Villains by Emma Rio, I think is heavily based off this, just like most of them. So this is the blueprint. And this is tons of people's favorite books. I will say I'm intimidated by it because I think there's only like 5 or 6 chapters. So each chapter is like 100 pages long, which just sounds awful to me. I honestly don't know what the plot is, so let's read the back. Under the influence of a charismatic classics professor, a group of clever, eccentric misfits at a New England college discover a way of thought and a life a world away from their banal contemporaries. But their search for the transcendent leads them down a dangerous path beyond human constructs of morality. Did that tell me a lot? No. But does it sound interesting? Yeah. Okay, last book on my TBR is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, which I think is another Dark Academia, but it's also a fantasy. I've never read any of her books before, and I know that she has the Grisha verse, which is like Shadow and Bones and Six of Crows and some other ones, but I've been told that this one is not part of that, so like I can read this and it won't ruin any of the other books for me. This one is about secret societies at Yale, and I think that it has a lot to do with magic and like magic revolving around death, so I assume it's very dark, which makes me think it would be perfect for fall, like maybe around Halloween time, maybe more of a spooky read. The second book in the series is Hellbent. I don't know if it's a duology or if there's going to be more, but I know that people went crazy when Hellbent came out, and so I know she's a talented author. I know that people love her, and I would love to dive into her books. Wow, that was a lot of talking, a lot of books. I have lots of reading to do. This is a very ambitious fall TBR. I know for a fact I am not going to read anywhere close to all of these books. So if any of these are your favorite and you want me to prioritize them, please let me know. I do think I'm gonna have a hard time like prioritizing and picking which books I want to read, so any help would be appreciated. And not that I have room for any more books, but if there's one fall book that I need to read and I left it out of this list, then please tell me. I hope maybe you found a new book either from my recommendations or from my TBR that you're adding to your own fall TBR. I would love to hear what you're reading. That is it for this video. I am gonna go put all of these books back. If you stayed till the end, then thank you so much. I hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!